Welcome to the Dumb Idea Podcast with Mike and Alex. Thank you for joining us, and we hope you enjoy the show. Please like, subscribe, comment, and share this video or podcast on any platform that you're listening on. Please visit us at www.dumbideapodcast.com.
All right, so for those of you that didn't know, there is 7-year-old travel swimming. And I didn't know this until my son made the 7-year-old travel swimming team. So we had to go up to north of Baltimore for a meet and drive through Baltimore to get up there. And as we're driving, in the morning, no one's out. And then the meet, we're coming back at about 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, people are now out. So as we're driving through the city and we get down near the stadiums, there are a bunch of homeless people hanging out. You can see the tents. They have tents set up under bridges. And it's not like the California system where you have these enormous encampments, but there were quite a few people out there. So my wife and I are talking, and she's asking why we're, why they're out there, and then we start discussing it, and well, can't they just get jobs? Well, it's not quite that simple. And just looking at the people out there, you feel bad for them because they are homeless. It's cold, but again, people do have control over their own destiny and make choices and certain things to put themselves in these positions. But some of it isn't that way. Some of it isn't as easy as that, as saying, oh, well, just don't be addicted to drugs anymore, or don't be schizophrenic anymore, or don't be both anymore. So it got me thinking as we're driving through the city and looking at this as to the policies that have gotten us to this point. Now, Baltimore's not as bad as California. California has the big encampments, like I said, but when you look at the amount of homeless in Baltimore, especially in the warmer months, it gets you thinking, where did we go wrong? And as I looked at it, I started doing some research because I'm a geek, and I geeked out on it a little bit, and went through a timeline of when this happened and causes, and a lot of it has to do with mental health and drug addiction, and that's kind of what gets them there. And with those things, it's not as simple as just, hey, let's throw treatment at them, or let's get them jobs, or let's find them houses, because the addiction and the mental health issues are what's running their lives and putting them on the streets. So, yeah, but that was the interesting conversation that we had. And with the boys there, they were seeing it, and we live in the suburbs, so they're not used to seeing that.
For us, and for us, when we drive through the city, which isn't that often, that's only what we actually see. I mean, the problem is probably 10 times worse than what we can even see. Mm-hmm. Especially in the areas that, people from the suburbs, they're not driving through certain areas of Baltimore to see what else is out there. I mean, for all we know, in the middle of Baltimore, there's this place called Patterson Park, and who knows what kind of encampments are set up there. But it's interesting if one of the most widely debated topics is the causes of homelessness. Why are there homelessness? Why are there homeless in this country? We're the most wealthy country in the world. We shouldn't have any homelessness. The problem is that it's a very, and we talk about this all the time, a lot of topics are nuanced, right? So, for example, with the mental health issue, it's not like people just run out and go right up to a police officer and say, "Help! I've got mental health issues, and I'm not going to be able to make my rent this month," or my schizophrenia is acting up, Mr. Police Officer, can you help me? And I feel like for the most part, a police officer might be able to, like, hey, here's a number for social services or something, but they're not going to be like, okay, let's sit down and have a therapy session because that's what I do. No, they don't do that. That's not their job, right? Yeah. And unfortunately, and this has been a trend probably over the last 25 to 30 years, money to go into treating and identifying mental health issues has gone way down, and it's only kind of resurfaced, I'd say, in the last 10 years as a hot topic, some of which got spurred on by some of the school shootings. But, and you and I have talked about this before, like, especially in my scenario, I definitely have some mental health issues that I've had to work through over the past couple of years. In fact, going back 9 years ago, like starting with therapy, some drugs that help. I mean, I'm not hitting the fentanyl pipe, you know what I mean? But you know, like medically prescribed drugs that help kind of level out some serotonin levels or whatever, to kind of help go through your day to day. The thing is, though, for someone like me who has health insurance, who has the wherewithal to know that, hey, help is available, not everyone has that. And if someone has a mental health issue and they don't get it treated, they can go on a very quick downward spiral to the point where they lose their job. It could lead to drug addiction because of depression or whatever. And next thing you know, you're 3 months late on your rent and now you're homeless. And it can happen that quick. Now, there are other issues, though, with mental health, heavier mental health issues. Not like, for me, it's treatable depression. And then also some panic attacks, but also treatable panic attacks with some medicines I use very infrequently.
Right. So we're not talking like, serious personality disorders or paranoid schizophrenia.
I'm not getting committed next week. You know what I mean? But think about it, though. Let's say I had like schizophrenia or something. I wouldn't have a clue where you go for that.
No, and the thing is, people who suffer from those conditions, they're thought disorders. But the thing is, to them, everything they're seeing and thinking is real.
Right.
Everyone else is the crazy one.
Well, and by the time someone even realizes that they've got a problem, they're probably in prison and they're getting diagnosed in prison.
Yeah.
Like,
or if they're not, they have to do something that makes them a threat to themselves or others, right, to get them involuntarily committed. So really, it's almost a shame that you have to go to the point where you're gonna, hurt yourself or kill yourself or somebody else, or you just can't live on your own but even at that point, we're not talking about a lifelong commitment. We're talking about, it could be 48 hours. It could be 72 hours for them to stabilize you and then say, okay, see you later. We don't have a bed.
Right.
And there are very few beds for mental health patients out there.
That's a huge problem that a lot of people don't really talk about. They're like, oh, we got to put more money into mental health, and that's it. They don't say specifics. Like for example, around us, we've got that old mental hospital, and that's what they call mental hospitals. Yeah, they should call them like either mental illness facility. Give them less of a stigma,
right?
But there was that place over on General's Highway.
Yep, and then there's the other one.
It's closed down though.
Oh yeah, there's the one, and then the one in Glendale was a tuberculosis hospital.
Right.
But
don't get me wrong, the one off of General's Highway wasn't exactly doing a lot of good work. Right. It was a mental hospital in name only. It was really probably a torture facility.
Yeah, so
that was back in the day when you get shot. The shock therapy was in.
Some of the lobotomies. And when I was doing my nerd research, like in Indiana, there was a facility that, where they would castrate, physically or chemically. There was either chemical or an actual surgical castration, and they called them like morons, idiots, and lunatics or something. And it's like, wow, that sounds like me when I'm driving, but that's how they referred to them. And then then the electroshock therapy, and then they got into the just drug, doping them up.
Yeah.
And then the lobotomies, the stuff that they were doing to people. And these doctors were able to just pretty much experiment freely because no one really was monitoring it. So it was kind of a, hey, let's try to cut part of his brain out and see if that works.
There's some documentaries about that stuff. There's not many of them, but and I wish I could think of one of the names of them, but man, some of the stuff they did was just horrific.
Yeah.
And then of course, no wonder nobody, because let's say someone went in and they were getting tested on all this other stuff, this weird stuff. Like, think like back to the 30s, the 40s, the 50s, right? Back when it was more prevalent, or even before that. And then someone gets out, oh, you're cured. Okay, here you go. Someone was able to fake it enough to get let go.
Yeah.
Well, once the word got around, well, this is what they do to you when you get committed. That's why, like, in some movies and stuff, they kind of, like, they portrayed it as people fighting to not get committed because they were afraid, one, they either weren't going to get out, or two, they were going to be tortured. Mm-hmm. And that just leads to the further stigmatizing of mental health and trying to get help.
Oh, yeah.
When in today's reality, it's not. At least I don't think it is. I mean, like for me, I go to a therapist, and my doctor prescribes me some medicines after they figure out kind of how to even it all out, right?
Yeah.
But I mean, shoot, who knows? Today maybe they're doing some Guantanamo Bay type stuff. They lighten up people's nipples and stuff. I don't know. I hope not.
The
but
battery cables.
At this point, I don't put it past.
Yeah, I don't think it's
anybody.
I don't think it's Abu Ghraib or Gitmo, but it's and because you mentioned the 30s, 40s, 50s. In 1963, John F. Kennedy signed it's called the Community Mental Health Act, and essentially it was to fix that problem and keep people local in their community. But if they needed to be institutionalized, it was there where they lived. They weren't going across the state. They weren't going, but there are certain things that happened, like when Medicaid was passed, then hospitals and the states were incentivized to put them in regular hospitals and nursing home facilities because Medicaid had no funding for treatment for institutions for mental diseases, is how it was written. So right then, like, they had something good, and then they wrote another law, and then torpedoed with the good thing they had going.
Well, we always talked about socialized medicine in this country. Like, you and I are both in favor of some kind of single payer.
Yeah.
But done right. Medicaid is a perfect example of a government-run medical plan that is pretty awful. Like, and I'll give you an example. My grandmother, my grandmother was born, I think she was born 1919, 1918, like long.
Yeah, that's where ago. I think that's where my grandmother was.
And she passed away, I believe, around like 85, 86 years old. All right. But in her latter days, she had to be in an assisted living facility. And she had to do it via Medicaid. So basically she would go in, goes into a facility that accepts Medicaid. Not all of them accept Medicaid. Because Medicaid doesn't pay very well.
Yeah.
And essentially, she was in a glorified hospital with beige walls and, the plastic vinyl tile flooring. Nurses run up and down. I mean, some of the patients, and they were definitely patients at this point, where, like, my grandmother had all of her faculties. She can move around mostly on her own for the beginning part she was there. But they essentially had her in a hospital wing, with patients that couldn't feed themselves.
Oh, yeah.
Needed to be bathed. But I guess my point is, because that was what Medicaid was willing to pay for. Yeah, she spent probably her latter 8 to 10 years of life in not a great facility.
Right.
Like, it wasn't. It's like, it's not something you call home. And for me, it was like, this is what we're doing to our senior citizens at this stage of their life, where it's extremely expensive. Not many people can afford a private place for them to live without forking over all of their Social Security, all of their retirement, basically just draining their whatever accumulated wealth they had. Now, my grandmother didn't have any, so she got what Medicaid was willing to pay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't, I mean, I wouldn't want to live there for the last 10 years of my life.
No.
Not that, I'm not saying there's roaches and but it just wasn't a very nice place to live. And that's what Medicaid afforded her. It was, it's kind of like that whole thing when you go to the hospital. Medicaid basically pays the hospital to stabilize you and get you out.
Yeah.
That's what our government is providing for people. And for me, like, so, like, yes, I'm in favor of a single payer socialized type medicine plan done right. Not the way Medicare and Medicaid for me ain't it.
It's yeah, when they
It
start
treats
talking,
people like shit.
yeah, when they start talking about Medicare for all, I'm like, no.
We need a different program than that.
Yeah.
Although I guess Medicare is a little bit different in the fact that it's mostly private insurers that get paid by the federal government to provide insurance. It's like a stipend plan almost at that point. But Medicaid is a federal state funded program that gets paid out by the state or federal. The states get money from the feds to pay out these things.
Right.
And I think there's a little bit of a match going on. But so that's where Medicaid and Medicare differ. Medicare is mostly done with private insurance companies that the federal government subsidizes, where it's almost like an employer health program a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong; those plans suck unless you're willing to really up your end of it. Like if you want to pay more for it. And again, these are seniors we're talking about. Medicare is for seniors for the most part. A lot of them don't have a lot of money. They don't have enough money to subsidize another plan on top of the Medicare they're getting. And Medicaid's even worse because Medicaid treats people like garbage.
Right.
You are a number, and they are going to do just enough to keep you alive until you die. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah. They're not moving mountains for you.
Nope. Not at all.
And there's no luxury. And when you get into some of these, when I went through this timeline and saw like where it went, there were some other laws that came out that kind of, contributed to the problem. There was it was called the Lanterman-Petrus Short Act that was in California. It essentially made involuntary hospitalization more difficult. So when you had that person that was schizophrenic or whatever condition they had, because I'm no psychiatrist or psychologist, aside from the Psych 101 and abnormal psych I took in college, but those sort of that act was really detrimental to treating people. And I think it was designed, again, like a lot of these laws, the intentions are good, but nobody thinks, and no one's playing the long game. No one's looking down and seeing what are the second, third, fourth order consequences to these laws. We're doing something that's going to make us feel good now, but we're not thinking about or we're doing something to treat an anecdotal issue or a one-off thing that was awful, but we're not thinking what's the ripple effect? What are the ramifications down the road? And this is an example of that, where they passed a law to make it harder to put people in, probably into those awful institutions.
Yeah.
But it kind of really hurt trying to get anyone long-term care.
Yeah, I think part of that though was because there were, again, we're talking about a different time. So I'm not saying, I'm not judging what happened back then, because I wasn't around. Different times, different mindsets.
Yeah, and I don't think I don't think it's fair, and it happens all the time. You can't look at the actions of people in the past through today's lens.
Right. Well, I guess my point was this. I think one of the reasons why that law was put in place was because people were committing family members who probably didn't deserve or need to be in a mental institution.
Yeah.
And again, when we talked about this a couple minutes ago, when these people got put into the mental institutions, it wasn't sunshine and rainbows. Like, it was torture.
Yeah.
A lot of times, because they didn't know how to treat mental illness back then. That's one thing. Like, mental health and mental health providers, the studies that have gone into the human brain have come an extraordinary long way from what they used to be. Again, I mean, they used to use shock therapy for something as simple as depression.
Yeah, that was a legit treatment.
Yes. Or they would, what was it? I think they used ether also.
Yeah, there's another drug I forget the name of it, but it was essentially like it would just turn you into a zombie.
Yep.
So when you see the movies and you see the people like shuffling around like zombies, like that was the drugs they were on.
It was opioids.
Yeah.
Because back then opioids were not. So right now opioids are in the news because of the Sackler family. By the way, if you haven't watched a show called Dope Sick on Netflix, unreal. I can't call it a documentary because it's got real actors and there's dramatizations in there, but it goes through how the Sackler family, who ran Purdue Pharma, not Purdue Chicken, different Purdue Pharma, when they came out with OxyContin. And and for people that don't know, that's what Rush was hooked on. Not just him. A lot of people have been hooked on that stuff. Under the guise of a professional doctor being sold a bill of goods. Mm-hmm. Like, they were literally told there's no possibility of addiction if you prescribe OxyContin. Well, the problem is, there were a couple problems. They got the dosage wrong for the doctors. So the doctors were prescribing not enough, and some patients weren't feeling that, weren't getting the proper effects of the pain relief. So then Purdue comes out and says, double it. Double it will work. And then patients were having the breakthrough pain again. So Purdue said, double it again.
Right.
And what it was doing, though, it was creating the addiction.
Yeah.
And then
well, it's just like
once people knew you could make you high as a kite, then the pill, what do they call them?
The pill mills?
Pill mills, yeah. And a lot of people think, so for people that remember like the crack epidemic back in the 80s, and you know, I forgot the movie, but it was like the documentary of Frank Lucas, and it had Russell Crowe and Denzel Washington in it. I wish I could remember I think it was American Hustler.
Okay.
Maybe I'm not really sure. But it kind of like showed how like crack and cocaine infested the black community, the poor black community. Well, opioids is what got the rural poor white folks. Mm-hmm. And there was another documentary, I wish I could remember, it's also on Netflix. Now that one was a documentary. So this guy's his kid got shot in a drug deal gone bad, and he went down a rabbit hole, and he ended up finding out that pill mills exist. And essentially all you do, you go to the pill mill, you pay your $25 or whatever, you get your prescription, and you can go get it filled. Mm-hmm. Most times the doctor wasn't even in the building.
Yeah.
You just would go and they write you the script.
Yeah, they had the pain clinics.
That was what it was, yeah. And people, especially in Appalachia, when coal miners, hard job, lots of pain.
Oh, yeah.
Hard on your back. Your back goes, guess what, though? You know, those jobs aren't like some office jobs that us in the suburbs get to have where we have sick days and vacation days. No. If you don't go in the mine, you're not getting paid.
Right.
So they would hook them up with OxyContin, feel great, feel no pain, go in the mine, you get your work done. Well, do that enough, you get addicted to it because it's an opioid. Well, my point of this is, back in the day, opioids were seen as an effective drug.
Oh yeah, they treat everything.
Yep. I mean, it came in like a little bottle.
Yeah, it's
liquid form.
It's funny, like when you read the ingredients of old medications, and it's like, you know, for cough syrup, and it's got heroin in it.
Yeah.
You know, Coca-Cola's coke. It's like, you know, this cough syrup has cocaine, heroin. I'm like, Jesus.
right. And the funny thing, they were giving it to kids back then. Like, Tommy's got a little too big.
Is that the Skid Row, like, to go order? Or is that
I'll tell you, no wonder that World War II generation was so tough. Then when they were being raised for, like a broken arm, here's some opioids.
Yeah, get back out.
Here's some meth.
Well, in the German army, like, they were like all hopped up on meth.
Yeah.
The Luftwaffe, those pilots were given, you know, when they'd fly those, especially in the, you know, they had a different philosophy now completely off topic, but they had a different philosophy when it came to pilots. We would rotate our pilots and air crews through. Mm-hmm. So their pilots, though, would fly until they died. And they would just fly mission after mission after mission. And well, in order to fly an airplane for, you know, 20 hours, you got to be awake. Right. So they would just get them all hopped up on meth.
It's the early version of no dose.
Yeah.
Remember that stuff?
Oh, yeah.
No dose before the 5-hour energy.
And there was, like, what was the other one? Was it Vivarin?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I love how they're like, 5-hour energy.
Yeah.
Perfectly safe and not harmful. Like, what? Are you kidding me? Like, just some random stuff. Well, it's got guarana in it.
Yeah.
That's safe.
Yeah, hey, and how bad could it be? I bought it at the counter at the gas station,
and
right next to the Yellow Jacket penis pills.
And they probably sprinkled some crack in it. You know, you know what? The small minor detail they don't tell you.
But back to the original topic of discussion. But finally in 1980, Jimmy Carter of all people kind of got it right and signed the Mental Health Systems Act. And it was just essentially to go back to what Kennedy had started and to restructure it and make it better. But that lasted about a year until 81, when the under Reagan, one of these omnibus spending packages came and they removed all federal funding from mental health, and that kind of puts us where we're at now, with prisons in the streets being the largest mental health facilities.
Well, prisons is another topic of conversation because the Prison Bureau, one of the largest lobbying firms in this country is the lobbying firm for prisons. And I bet you people are going, what are you talking about, man? Well, most federal prisons are privately run.
Yeah.
So they're not, the people that work in them are not federal employees. They're contract employees. Mm-hmm. So essentially, it can work kind of both ways. Either the private company can build the prison and staff it, or the federal government will build the prison and then pay someone to run it.
Well, anyone who's seen Orange is the New Black, that was one of the big things when they switched from the feds running it to the private contractors, and then the quality. And I'm not sure how accurate it was, but to say that happened, the poor quality of employees got even worse.
Yeah. Well, and how that runs, though, is, and there's a whole other topic of how police departments get federal funding through a program called the COPS program. But essentially, the prisons that get federal money get more money for the more beds they have filled. Mm-hmm. And the COPS program gives more money to police departments that arrest more people. So the incentive is to, 1, arrest people, 2, incarcerate people, because that's where the money flows.
Yeah.
And that's one thing. Again, people don't know about these things. So the other thing is how much. So let's if you got the story of the guy with 2 joints, and I know a lot of red pill people out there be like, some guy that got caught with 2 joints and not doing 20 years in prison. Oh, really? Let's look at that.
Yeah.
A lot of low-level drug offenses got absurd sentences.
Right. And then there was also a disparity between those that were given to. So, like, when you look at the sentences for crack cocaine are much higher than powdered cocaine.
Right.
Well, who uses crack cocaine?
Right.
If you look
black people,
right,
inner city.
That's where it's happening. Who uses powdered cocaine?
Rich white people.
Right.
Yeah.
So, same drug.
Same thing.
Now the high's different between the two of them. I think one might have a higher addictive property just because of how it works, but really, it's the same thing.
Which, by the way, even though red-pilled America probably doesn't think that type of stuff happens, well, guess who put that policy in place and enforced it? Your boy Joe Biden.
Yeah. Yeah, 94.
Wrote the bill, the crime bill, that upped the sentences for low-level drug use and possession. And oh, by the way, good old vice president out there basically enforced that in California.
Yeah.
And in particular, L.A. And San Francisco and Oakland, which, look who they happen to be.
Right.
Yeah. And so it's like, I think if people take the time to research stuff, I think like I said, you got one side that doesn't think it exists, and the other side is the side that did it.
Right.
So like, and the other side, I mean, don't get me wrong. There's a whole thing with the uniparty right now where it's like the people with R's and the people with D's next to their name,
just the same people.
A lot of them are part of the same uniparty, and you get a couple on the left and the right, the populists on the left and the right, that probably could be one party because they only disagree on probably two things.
Yeah.
That want to change that, but every time they try and change that, by the way, Bernie ran in 2016, right?
Yeah.
It's 2021 right now. 5 years. I've never seen an individual just give up their principles as quickly as he did.
Yeah.
Someone was gonna Jeffrey Epstein, that guy, apparently, because he did a turnabout real quick and was like, you know what?
Get in line.
In my 70s and 80s, I don't want to end up in a ditch somewhere.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna pretend like I'm fighting for the people, but I'm not gonna fight for the people.
Or maybe he was hanging out with Epstein, and that's how they're going to get him.
Listen,
But
by the way, if you don't know that the Ghislaine Maxwell trial still going on, which by the way,
it's getting zero press.
Zero press, not one
and
thing.
you think there'd be all kinds of salacious details in that one?
Oh, so there are. So her defense attorney, I'm trying to, man, I got to see if I can remember these bouncing balls here. So the prosecuting attorney is someone's famous kid, and I'll look it up when we talk a little bit more. Also happened to be the prosecutor on the Epstein case.
Okay.
Now, in a district attorney's office, it's kind of rare for the same person to get two really high-profile cases, especially if it's not in your division. And this isn't in their division.
Mm-hmm.
The defense attorney is also somehow, there's some connection to another case, and I can't remember what it was. I wish I could remember. I know I've got a whole lot of information here to give people. Hey, this is
So there's a guy and this guy, and they know each other.
There's this crazy thing happening with a guy and this other guy, and I got no names to put behind it. But anyway, there's really something weird going on, and everyone points like, "Oh, Epstein was the ringleader. Epstein was the ringleader." Some people are starting to think that Maxwell was the ringleader, which is why she's not dead, and that she had him offed.
Yeah.
So she had him offed to protect herself and her case, and she's doing the protecting of all the high profile people.
So like she's going to eat whatever this thing is.
Oh, they think she's going to get off.
Oh, really?
So they only got, so there were 6 original witnesses or 6 original accusers, 2 of which had the better cases to bring, and for some reason, the state isn't bringing those 2.
Did they shoot themselves in the back of the head twice?
Not yet. Although maybe this is how they avoided it.
Yeah.
By not participating.
Yeah.
And the other 4 with weaker accusations are the 4 that were on the witness stand. Just the state is conveniently leaving out the strongest parts of the case. It's a strange scenario going on there. And like you said, there is no press.
Yeah, nothing.
I mean, all I got is I got it off of people I trust, like the news people I trust on YouTube.
The trial started right after Thanksgiving, the Monday after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Isn't it crazy that like that all of a sudden Omicron variant comes out then too? Right after Thanksgiving. But I don't know. My prefer.
The prosecutor is Maureen Comey.
That sounds familiar.
Last name sounds familiar, doesn't it?
Really familiar.
Her dad, James Comey.
Wow.
Former head of the FBI. Yeah, strange, huh?
Yeah.
Strange. I'm not going to say anything else because I don't want to.
You're going to end up Vince Fostered.
You know what? That's why we're going to leave it there. We're just going to leave that part there because, I don't want to. I don't want anyone showing up at my door tomorrow.
Yeah. But, no, definitely not. But the
things got uncomfortable real quick down here.
I know. So you get warm in here, looking around for the bugs.
Knock, knock, knock.
Yeah.
Like, son of a. No, right.
But
things are. Again, we're not going to talk anymore about it. It's just a little strange that connection's there.
Yeah, but getting back to the private prisons thing. That's one of the and BLM.org, like the actual organization, part of their platform is elimination of private prisons. And I agree with it.
I kind of agree with that too.
Because to me, you shouldn't be making money off of, despair.
Yeah, the problem with government run prisons, and this happens. This happens with any kind of government run agency. The buildings get dilapidated.
Yeah.
Because the government will build something, but they will never maintain it.
Right.
I mean, just look at the transportation infrastructure of this country, right? They built bridges, tunnels, it was great, right? But they were built in the 1800s.
Yeah.
For the most part, especially the railroads.
Mm-hmm.
Like, people always wonder like how we can't get high speed rail in the Northeast corridor from like Boston to DC. Well, the problem is actually it's not the trains.
Yeah.
The Acela train can go 120 miles an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's 150, but technically that's a high speed train. The problem is that the infrastructure doesn't allow for it because there are a couple turns that can't. There's some turns and there's some bridges that are too small. So the bridges were still. Some of the bridges are single way.
Yeah.
So if you're on the north side, you got to wait for someone to come up you got to wait for someone going north before you can go south. But essentially, a lot of it's just falling apart, and the U.S. government or state and local governments never pay to maintain this shit stuff.
Right, they never. At one point, the United States had one of the large. Because people always talk about European rail. And anyone who's been to Europe knows that you can, from any little burg or hamlet, no matter where you are, can jump on a train and be anywhere in Europe within a day.
Yep.
And we don't have that here. Like, there's no train that, if we were in Europe, there'd be a train that ran from Annapolis to Baltimore and to D.C. and down to South County, and there'd be trains all over the place.
Well, there used to be one. Mm-hmm. The B&A trail.
It's a bike trail now.
Well, now it's right. Now it's a bike trail, but that used to be rail.
Yeah.
It's gone.
Yeah. And the thing is, like, they built these, and they just let it go to waste.
Yeah.
Now, other forms of transportation came in, but everyone's, we're going to do the cars and then trucks. And I remember my mother used to say, they should, because she didn't like trucks, and she said, there should be a special lane on the road just for trucks, and only trucks can be in it, and they'll stay away from me. And
it's called the right lane.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, if we just keep the person doing 55 out of the left lane.
Right. Yeah, no kidding.
But I said, yeah, there used to be one. And she said, what was that? I said, the railroads. Like, that's how everything was transported. But
a lot of it is today, too.
Yeah.
But, yeah, you're right. Trucks get things to the endpoints.
Yeah. But you had these big... We had a very robust system, which the automobile came out. In Los Angeles, they had a system that was called the Red Line. And I want to say General Motors and Ford got together and essentially bribed all the politicians to defund it. And it's completely gone. Because they wanted to, because at the time Los Angeles was a newer developing city, and they wanted to sell more cars.
Yep.
So they looked at public transportation as the competitor to them selling cars. Because in New York, if you live in Manhattan, a lot of people don't even own a car.
Yep.
You just ride this because the public transportation system's good up there.
Yep.
But so they gave it to the automobile manufacturers went and bribed and bought off, and even bought pieces of it and then just tore it down so that people couldn't use it.
Yeah.
And they had to buy a car. And if you look at Los Angeles, like, the traffic in Los Angeles is just
horrible,
unbelievable. But Los Angeles had a lot of homeless people too. Getting back to
homelessness.
Yeah.
I mean,
and when you look at this, we've kind of gotten off topic, but if you think there's an underlying theme, it's just bad policy after bad policy after bad policy, then throwing more money at it.
Right.
Let's just throw money at it.
Or sometimes we don't.
Right. So
just leave it be.
Yeah. So the state of California in the next 2 years is budgeted to spend $4.8 billion on homelessness. And I guarantee you when they're done, there will be just as many, probably more homeless people in Los Angeles. And if you go to these, and I haven't been out west, but there's an Instagram page I follow called Street People of Los Angeles. And it's, the guy, when he's driving around, goes and he'll film just block after block after block of encampments. They call them encampments, but it's just people on the street.
Right.
They pass some dumb laws out there. Again, stuff that makes you feel good now, but you don't think of the second and third order consequences. So homeless people in Los Angeles, imagine walking out of your house and there's some dude in front of your house. You're going to school with your kids, and the dude's playing with himself, and then the guy next to him is pooping in a bucket.
Or just on the street.
Yeah.
Because, like, in San Francisco, like, there are literally people that'll just poop around the street.
Yeah.
And one thing, like, our generation doesn't remember this because we weren't alive back then. But there's the movie called Cinderella Man, another Russell Crowe movie, talking about, I can't remember the boxer, but basically, poor guy, used to be a boxing champion, and got hurt so he couldn't fight, and then worked his way back, and ends up fighting Max Baer for the heavyweight championship. Ends up winning. Well, in that movie, though, there was a scene where a guy he used to work at the docks with drinks a little too much, leaves his wife, and lives in a Hooverville.
Mm-hmm.
Now, for people that don't know, Hoovervilles are basically homeless encampments. So these men would go find an open space, and back then I don't think they used as many tarps, but they would build these makeshift single room homes, and they did it in Central Park. And then what would happen is the government would come through with the horse unit, or the police unit, the horse police
Central
unit,
Park Rangers or whatever,
and they would come through and they would just tear it all down.
And this was all in the 30s, like the Great Depression era. Yeah.
Yep. But for me, it's very similar to that, where people are now setting up homeless encampments, which is essentially Hoovervilles.
Yeah.
Except, I mean, now they don't call them Hoovervilles; they just call them homeless encampments.
Right. And now they're not even calling them homeless; they're calling them the unhoused.
Unhoused, yes.
Which, okay, but and when you look at, so then I'm not sure whether it's the city of Los Angeles or whether it was a California law or one city did it and the rest of them followed suit, where the police can't move a homeless person's stuff. So they can have this encampment set up. And you'll see the people around here with like a shopping cart full of stuff, so that if they say, hey, you got to move, they just push it along and get it around the corner away from the cop, and then they just set up again.
Right.
Well, it's the police are not able to move their stuff because they've attached some sort of property right to them being able to stay outside.
Right.
So now their stuff is now sacred and they can stay there. So you're having them set up in places that used to be nice. The real estate, you spend $1 million in a house in California, it's probably going to look like this house, right. But this is a nice neighborhood. So you walk out, but you walk outside your house and there's someone pooping on the street.
Yep. Or how about if they put a tent on the sidewalk, which is public land. Yeah.
And you can't move it. And you call the police and the county comes out and says, hey, sorry, deal with it. And then you wonder why the crime goes up in that area.
Right.
Now, some people might say, oh, it's because the cost of housing is so high, they just can't afford. That might make up 1% of the people out there.
Why don't they move out of San Francisco? They can go to Utah or Idaho and go work at the Piggly Wiggly, right. And they can afford rent for $450 a month because Idaho, the cost of living there is so much less than San Francisco. Yet you don't think people in their right mind would do that, especially if you had an opportunity to leave a situation where you're housing your family, your wife, your kids, or maybe you had to leave your wife and kids because you couldn't afford to put food on the table, and by you leaving, they were able to get welfare assistance. Mm-hmm. You don't think that a person in their own right mind would say, you know what, family? We're going to go move to Idaho, and I'm going to go get a job working at the grocery store where I can afford a 1-bedroom apartment to get us on our feet again.
Yeah.
Someone in their right mind makes that decision. These people that are home, like, not all of them, we're not saying all of them are mentally having issues, but a lot of them are.
Yeah.
And don't worry, some people choose to live the homeless lifestyle. I get that too. Mm-hmm. But that also, someone that wants to live the homeless lifestyle doesn't give them the right to put in a tent-like structure in front of my house.
Yeah.
That I'm paying taxes for, and because of some weird city ordinance, nobody can do anything to move them. Okay, well, if that's the case, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Like, why do I need to pay the property taxes then?
Right,
They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They don't own that, so why do they? Shoot, what's to stop me from literally ditching my house and just setting up a huge tent? I can set up a 5-bedroom tent right in the middle of the road, and you can't do anything.
Just park the RV there.
There you go. You know what? Hey, just lower my expenses. But
Yeah.
no, but I mean, at some point, you're going to drive someone to do something real stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And you'd be, oh, how could they do that to the homeless person? Oh my gosh, that's so insensitive. Okay. You buy a $1.5 million row home in San Francisco and open your door to someone pooping on your sidewalk.
Right.
And just chilling out in a tent in front of your home.
You think stepping on a dog turd's annoying?
Yeah, imagine a human one. Imagine the log that is. God. But yeah, so no, we're not talking about people in their right mind. We're talking about people that have issues that can't move out of the area for one reason or another.
Because the people that can move out of California that want to are.
Do. Yes. It's not some big secret that California has a high cost of living.
Yeah.
And literally the next state over or 2 states over, you can go to the desert in Nevada if you really wanted to. You could go work for the casino and be fine.
Mm-hmm.
And people do that.
Yeah.
People go to areas. I got a buddy. He lived here for a few years. He was a pharmaceutical sales rep. Makes a lot of money, right? Was from California, though. But even he, after living in California for about 10 years, he was like, this is getting out of hand. Moved to Arizona.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to Phoenix. Just because and he got the same size house for $500,000 less.
Yeah.
Was still near a major airport, so could still do his sales runs where he had to go. And didn't have to put up with a lot of the BS anymore.
Yeah, didn't have to,
none
of it.
But not everyone is like I said, not everyone has the ability to just get up and move. But
right.
People in their right mind will go to where the work is and
mm-hmm.
where it's cheaper to live if they're in a situation where they're facing homelessness.
Yeah.
But those aren't the people we're talking about.
And they did a bunch of stories back in the I guess right around 2008 and all that stuff when the markets were crashing during the recession of people who couldn't whose houses were foreclosed on and they were living in their cars and like different places were setting up like safe places to park so you could sleep in your car. And I think they would like you to believe that all the unhoused, again, air quotes, are those people, but they're not. There's certain things that is encouraging more people to come there. One, you just have the weather in California is year round. It's hospitable.
Right. 77 sunny.
Yeah.
Barely any rain.
Yeah. You don't see it. Now there are homeless people in DC, Baltimore,
sure,
Boston, New York, but it gets cold here,
mm-hmm.
and they'll find warm places to go. There, Venice Beach, it's nice all the time. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just live in your tarp tent house and poop on the street and be good.
It's waterfront property.
Yeah. I've always wanted to live on the beach.
Maybe I'll go. Waterfront property.
But I think also they call them encampments. They want to make it seem like it's these nice places. They're not. Like, they're sick people there.
Mm-hmm.
They're physically ill, mentally ill. And then then there are those that are preying upon them that live there as well.
Right.
So, and then the state's just going to throw money at it. And there's no incentive structure to make them want to what's the accountability?
I don't think there is any.
There's none.
To be honest with you, I think from the government's point of view, I think they're willing to just wait it out until they all die off.
Right. But the thing is, there's going to be another crop behind them because there's plenty of dope and there's plenty of mental illness to go around for everyone.
They don't see it that way, though. I don't think they see it that way. They think there's only a finite number of people that will get themselves in this situation
mm-hmm.
before times get better or whatever it is. Like, before this period of time ends and this situation won't happen anymore.
Yeah.
these people will just die off.
Yeah, it won't be the thing.
No, it won't.
Or they'll all do something. Right, they'll all get killed, or they'll all do something stupid enough to get themselves put in prison for a long enough period so that they're like gone.
Or the media will stop caring about it, or the people will stop caring about it.
Yeah, because it won't be the thing anymore.
Right, you don't have to worry about it.
The thing is, when you have human beings living on the streets, though, that's something that you can't just ignore. But I mean, they're pretty good at ignoring all kinds of stuff anyway.
No, but the red pill side of this is that, well, people. This is America. People do what they want to do. People are free to do as they wish. Government shouldn't be involved in this.
Yeah,
that's also a crock of nonsense. Too.
Yeah,
like look, I'm not saying the government needs to take care of all these people or do all this, but I'm just saying, look, if the one thing this country is somewhat decent at as far as the people are concerned, not necessarily the government, when the people know there's a problem and they can help, most of the times they will.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's why organizations like the Red Cross exist.
Yeah.
Habitat for Humanity, Wounded Warriors.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, and there's a lot more. I'm just naming the few right off the top of my head. I think Paul Walker, the late Paul Walker, everyone knows him from the Fast and Furious, but the guy had a charity set up where he could raise a lot of money. And, for example, his charity went to Haiti when they had the earthquake. Now, the Clintons also went to Haiti with their charitable organization, and they siphoned off a whole bunch of money. Paul Walker's group, though, 100% of the funds went to go helping people in Haiti, and Paul Walker went himself. And that's something people don't know about him. But there are other organizations out there that are more like Paul Walker's group than the Clintons group.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, there's a lot of organizations that they have a lot of overhead. So people are like, well, you only 10 cents on the dollar goes to actually helping people. It's a little exaggerated, but even if it was 50-50, but at least they're willing, they've got the ability to mass, what's the word I'm looking for? Deploy.
Yeah.
Into situations, right? And the private individuals out there, red pill, blue pill, doesn't matter, are usually more than willing to donate to those causes because they know things will get done. I mean, a lot of people that are red pill would rather take that 25 or 30% they're paying to the federal government
and give it to
those.
Yeah.
They don't. It's not the actual. I mean, don't get me wrong. Yes, would they like to pay less in taxes? Sure, but their biggest problem is they pay these taxes to a hugely inefficient organization called the federal government or the state government versus a private organization that can just get stuff done.
Right.
Like, I think if the proposition was, hey, take this 30% instead of giving it to federal government, give it to Habitat for Humanity. Done.
Yeah.
I think a lot of them would do it in a heartbeat. But beside the point.
Yeah. And I think that's my, because like you have one side that thinks the government's the only answer and the other side that thinks the government is the absolute wrong answer. But government done right can be the right answer. And sometimes it has to be the government that comes in and does it. But for whatever reason, they just won't do it right. I think it's because you have individuals, you have people that are looking out for themselves or for their own agenda before they are looking out for the result. Or you get into these things where they pass something that makes them feel good, that they think's doing a good thing, but they're not looking down the road to see what the result of the policy is going to be. And when you look at like this, the endless cycle of poverty and despair in some of these cities, you can see where there's tons of money. You go to Baltimore City schools, they spend the most money per student of any school system in the state.
Problem is it doesn't go to the students.
Right.
It goes to the over-bloated Board of Education and administration. I mean, to be honest with you, it's the same way here in Anne Arundel County. Mm-hmm. A lot of the money here isn't going to the schools. It's going to the bloated salaries of the Board of Education. Yeah,
administrators and
right. I'm not talking about the elected people. I'm talking about the superintendent. I mean, superintendent it's $400,000.
Yeah,
plus perks. Mm-hmm. Like the perks are, it's another topic altogether. to run a school district in which he pretty much has no say anyway, because the board, the elected board, has more of a say than he does.
Yeah.
On how things are run. So it's like, what are we paying for here?
Yeah.
Yeah. And we had talked about this in another podcast, like the number 5 or 6 transportation logistics person making over $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Are you kidding?
To do what?
To tell us that we can't have a bus.
Yeah.
Because we're within a mile of the school.
And now no one can have a bus because
because no one's driving them anyway.
Talking about that one too.
Yeah. But yeah, it's like the inefficiencies are incredible. Like we have our normal budgets were about $1 to $1.5 trillion before all this COVID stuff happened. Mm-hmm. This latest budget's like $5 trillion, which is crazy to me. But $1 trillion, and we can't do some basic things for the people of this country.
Yeah. And the thing is,
because everyone's got to get paid.
And $1 trillion is such a number that people don't really understand how big of it. So $1 trillion is 1,000 billion. Mm-hmm. And $1 billion is 1,000 million.
Yeah. 100,000. Yeah. No, that's not right.
999,000 million, and then it's $1 billion.
There's a lot of numbers thrown out. A lot of zeros in this.
Yeah, so it's 1,000 million. So
we didn't bring our math game.
So like $1 trillion's like $1 billion million. Like it's crazy. $1 million. It's nuts.
So much money.
Yeah. So like I'd be happy with just a cool mill.
Right.
You know?
Can we get a little bit of that?
Yeah. Let me have some of that action.
And no. But you want to know what the states do? They tease everybody. Give us $1 at a time. Got to be in it to win it.
Yeah.
We got to pay to play with the freaking lottery system around here. The biggest hypocrisy I never got from state government was illegal gambling. Mm-hmm. But the lottery was okay.
Yeah, just state racket.
Right. But you had such a minimal chance of winning the lottery.
Yeah.
That was okay?
At least if you play the tables at MGM, like you know, it's the odds are in favor of the house, but
not like the lottery. You kidding me? The lottery, to hit that lottery?
Yeah.
It's like 1 in 50 million. No, that's not right. I'll say 1 in 2 million. That's probably closer, right? Yeah. Because you got to figure not everyone in the state. It's by number of people who enter.
Yeah.
So you figure 2 million people in a state of 14 million might play.
But then like Powerball is multi-state.
Well, that's multi-state.
Yeah.
So you got Mega Millions, which is also multi-state. Powerball, multi-state.
Yeah.
And then Maryland has its own state lottery.
Right.
So it's like you literally, I mean, even if you was 1 in a million chance of winning, well, at least if I go to the blackjack table, the odds are 47-53.
Yeah.
I got a 43% chance of winning. Mm-hmm. Not 0.0006% chance of winning. I literally have a better chance of going and winning the blackjack.
Yeah.
In fact, and if I do a little card counting a little bit, it goes 49-51.
Yeah.
I can increase my percentage by 2.
Just by counting the
just
cards.
by doing, which by the way, we just saw our math skills, which is why I'm not going up to live casino to get my 49% chance of winning something.
Just buy more lottery tickets.
Right. Right. I'll take that 0.00006 chance of winning versus the 49% chance. Makes sense. I got it.
Takes no skill.
None.
But
double down.
See, I don't get the etiquette. That's why I've never been a gamp, because like I'm like, if you're like, oh, you split this and double down, I'm like, I don't know what any of this means.
So listen, all right. So in my opinion, so I got 2 different opinions on this. One, if you're at a blackjack table and you sit down and it's your money on the table, you do whatever the heck you want. It's your money. Now, some people who go to the higher tables do expect you to play a certain way.
Yeah.
Now, and this is where it gets a little odd. At some point, you've got FU money, do what you want, right? And if someone doesn't like the way you're playing, they can stop playing.
Yeah.
But if you're at like a $25 minimum table and under, and someone's doing that crazy stuff, and I am one to do that stuff, like I'll split 10s against a 6. Like I'll take the 20 off the board because the 6 is showing. And some people like it's a good move. Other people think I'm nuts, right? But the point for me is I'm trying to get the most money on the table when a 4, 5, or 6 are showing. I don't care how I get it on there because I'm not betting on me getting 21. I'm betting on the dealer busting.
Right.
So for me, I don't care if I got a 12 or a 19. I don't care. That dealer's showing a 6, and odds say he's got a 10 underneath, and he's going to hit something higher than a 5. And I'm going to win everything regardless of what I got, right? That's the old thinking of, that's how you get your odds to 49%.
Yeah, see, the only thing I know about blackjack is 21.
Right.
I don't know. You lost me there.
Right. But I guess so here's my thing. If I'm at a $25 minimum table or under, and I'm doing this stuff, and someone decides to chirp at me, I tell them to go pound sand. Like, get out of here. Like, there's a $100 table over there. They'll play more like you want.
Yeah.
This is a $25 table. I'm here for some fun.
Right.
I'm here for some action.
If you're playing at the $25 table, expect $25 table shit.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Right. Right. And you get like these old, like it's mostly like the older people that get all pissy with
The
you.
old geezer. Yeah.
And I have no problem telling them to piss off. Like, nah, you can go down there.
Yeah.
I'm doing what I'm doing. You do what you do.
I'm just going to buy like 38 lottery tickets.
Right. Well, the funny thing with this table, it's not my responsibility for you to win money.
Right.
You do what you're going to do. I'm going to do what I do. Which is probably another reason why I just go to the craps table and throw some dice.
Yeah.
That's a hell of a good time.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know anything about it.
That's great.
I played dollar roulette on a cruise. That's the extent of my gambling. And I'm usually there for about 20 transactions before my $20 bills go, and then I leave.
Right.
But yeah, the lottery it's funny because in my research, one of the things that came up, like, because I was just looking at like other bad policies and laws that are out there, and I saw like lotteries, and it was from the Heritage Foundation, so it's a little.
I think that was what.
You gotta take that with a grain of salt. Because they're super. I mean, they're like libertarian, like Cato Institute type stuff.
Don't they put on the CPAC conference?
Yeah.
That's pretty. That's as red pill as it gets right there. Yeah, that's almost, that could be Christian Coalition type stuff right there. Like, it doesn't get more right wing than that.
Yeah, but if you're looking for bad laws, they pretty much think everything the government does is bad.
Yes.
But there is a lot of stupid things. When you look at the cycle of poverty and despair in cities, and you have people that start out poor, and they're poor for they started out that way. So why are they that way? And I'm no expert, but I think you can think about opportunity, education, and family structure. So if those things are lacking, then there's pretty much going to stay in that situation. You have some individuals that'll make it through, but if you look at overwhelming, and I'm not talking about the individual, I'm talking about the community as a whole, in a place like Baltimore or any of these cities. So then what do they do? What do they see? They see people turning to crime as a way, whether it's theft or robberies or low-level drug dealing, whatever it is. And then when you have a situation like that, if you're a drug dealer and someone stiffs you, you can't go to court.
Right.
There's no better business bureau for the drug dealer. You can't send them to collections.
No.
So there's no recourse for you. So the only recourse is violence.
Right.
If someone's edging on your turf, you can't advertise more or go buy the other. No, you have to. Your only recourse is through violence. So once you have the resultant violence, the government says, we have to do something. People say, we have to do something. What do? They throw the police at it. Which, okay, the police should be responding to violent crimes, but then it results in more people going to prison, and that just kind of perpetuates this cycle.
Right.
And it all just comes back to the poverty. But all of these steps to solve each of these things cost money, and no one's addressing the root causes of it.
Right.
And I'm not going to go and say that it's only the government that can address it, because if the people aren't going to take the help and not going to act as agents of their, you can't remove agency from them. They still have agency, so they're still able to participate to improve their lives if they choose not to. This cycle is going to continue and continue, and no matter what policy. But the thing is, it just seems like we throw bad policy at it.
Of course.
Let's take that low-level drug dealer and put him in prison for a very long time.
Right.
Putting him in prison for a very long time doesn't do anything but stigmatize him. So now he can't obtain meaningful employment.
Well, never mind the fact. If you go in as a felon and you come out of jail, your employment prospects go way downhill.
Yeah.
The one thing that can keep someone out of prison is a good job. Like people can go into prison and get educated.
Yeah.
You can get your bachelor's, you can get your GED, your bachelor's degree, your master's in prison for free.
Yeah.
Which I actually don't think is a bad idea, right? The problem is though, when you come out of prison, you're still a felon.
Yeah.
And people won't hire you.
Right.
So you could come out with a PhD and people are going to tell you no thanks because you were a felon. Like, I definitely, and there's definitely a thing where people who go into prison and do their time now, whether they should have been in prison to begin with is a whole nother topic of discussion, which we've hit on a little bit. But once you pay your debt to society, if you truly come out and you're trying to do good, people need to just be like, we need to embrace this person.
Yeah.
To keep them from doing it again.
Right. To keep them from to reduce the recidivism.
Right. That's right. But that's what I'm saying. Like, if people.
But essentially, and what it turns into is every sentence is a life sentence.
Right.
Because it's going to follow you for your entire life.
Even if you go for 2 years.
Yeah.
Let's say you get a year as a felon.
Yeah. You're a felon.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, your earning potential just went way downhill.
Yeah.
And if my options are $7.50 working at a Wendy's with a manager who just sucks and won't stop yelling at me,
yeah,
or I can go make a quick $1,000 or $2 working on the street,
hanging out with my boys,
probably gonna take my chances.
Yeah, and that's what you know anyway,
right? And you're good at it.
Yeah,
I mean, like, I think in this country we because of that stigmatization, we waste a lot of talented people.
Yeah,
because the system, and I'm not saying it's like the system in general, but people that own businesses, especially small businesses, just don't want to take a chance. Like, if I don't need to take that risk, why would I? Right?
Yeah, and you think of it, and most employers are small businesses. So if you're that small business that is thinking, okay, like, there's always that in the back of your head. Do you want it there? Hey, is this guy stealing from me? Is this guy doing this? Is this guy doing that? No. So you just avoid the subject altogether. And what we've done is we've allowed it. The way things are built is that's perfectly okay. You do a background check on somebody. Oh, they're a felon? You could not hire them simply because they're a felon.
Right. Well, never mind, even to live.
Yeah.
To get an apartment, they do a background check on you.
Yep.
They see you're a felon? Nope, not going to live here.
Yeah.
So now you're forcing them to live in a bad area to begin with.
Yeah, so they go back to the same environment they came from.
Exactly.
And then they have no skills, or if they have obtained skills while they were locked up, they can't use them. You still got to eat.
Yeah.
You got to do whatever you got to do, so you go right back to doing what you're doing. And eventually, it either becomes the cycle repeats, or you get killed at one part of the cycle.
Right.
You get killed in your criminal activity, in your violent crime, in your police interaction. Though that number's not as big as people like to think it is.
Right.
But it's still a possibility. In prison, or you just age out and die.
For the most part, though, it's not going to be a police interaction that gets them. It's going to be the street activity that gets them.
Yeah.
I mean, by the numbers, I believe it's 25 times more likely to have harm done to you on the street than versus with a police interaction.
Right.
That's a big difference.
Yeah. And there have been studies where they talk to people in Baltimore who were locked up with guns. They're like, why do you have a gun? And none of them say, it's because I'm afraid of the police.
Right.
None of them are strapped because they're afraid of the police. They're strapped because the other dude has a gun.
Right.
And when you're selling drugs on the street corner, you can't go and say, hey, the other drug dealer's shooting at me. Can you come take care of that?
Right, right.
Like, you got to handle your business. So, that's why they're...
I think there's a whole world people don't even know about.
Yeah.
In that regard.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, I don't think it's not race. I mean, some people think it's a race issue. Not, I don't... Parts of it might be, but if you don't think Hispanic and white people are doing the same kind of drug game,
Yeah.
out of your mind.
Yeah.
It's happening all over.
Yep.
Different areas are run by different groups of people. You got Dominicans, you got black folks, Jamaicans, Haitians.
Yeah. Well, and on the West Coast.
I'm not even gonna say just black people. There's certain sects in the black community. Haitians, Jamaicans, and I'm not gonna I don't want to just, but other parts too.
Oh yeah. Well, if you go to the West Coast, you've got the Triad, Yakuza, the Vietnamese street gangs that are coming, that are there. So and the thing is, like, look back to the 20s and 30s. It was the Italian mafia, the Irish mafia, the Russian mafia, the Jew, and they all started.
They still got them.
Yeah, they're still there.
Still there.
Yeah,
they're just quieter.
Yeah,
and that's because the police went after the Italian mafia. So what the Italian mafia did, went underground. Mm-hmm. Just became a lot. I mean, they finally realized, hey, look, we can't be out and about.
Yeah,
flashing all this stuff going on.
Yeah, like John Gotti and
right, yeah,
acting a fool.
Right.
I mean,
there's one thing to say that you got to be the Teflon Don, but there's another thing to say, hey, maybe we shouldn't just be as flashy and no one's even gonna be looking at us.
Yeah,
that's a huge difference there. You don't gotta be Teflon if no one's cooking in your pan.
Yeah,
it's a big difference.
Yeah, but yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, and we can go on for hours about bad policy and throwing money at, good money after bad.
Yeah,
and I think at some point, someone somewhere has to realize that what we're doing isn't working, and then maybe try something new. Maybe
I'm laughing because I just don't see it changing.
But maybe for the drug addiction piece, rather than treating it as a criminal justice issue, we treat it as a health issue, as a public health issue.
I hope so.
Because why do people go around and break into cars? To get change and stuff, Now, that's not always the reason. Some people are trying to do identity theft with the information they're getting out of it. But there's an underlying reason why some of these crimes occur, why homelessness is around. So if you're to go after the root cause, and we're just treating symptoms. We're not treating any of the root cause. So, if the cancer is still under there and you're just going after what you can see, meanwhile it's spreading, or the iceberg, if you lop off, only 10% of the iceberg sticks above the water.
Right.
So you chop that 10% off, well, guess what? The rest of it just bobs up. And 10% of what's remaining is still there. But at least with the iceberg, you're doing something with that top. We're not doing any of that.
Right.
So.
Well, thank you for listening. We hope you liked the show. Please like, subscribe, comment, share. Let us know what you think. And we will see you next time.